Welcome to The Retro Adventurers, a podcast about classic text adventure games. We have an episode of Gizmos and Grottos today, as our co-host Ben Collier, not pictured, selected two with a Christmas theme. However, with me is our evergreen host Jason Compton, and we have played both of Ben's selections. Good evening, yes. Jason.
Am I the Marley or am I the Scrooge in our pairing for this Christmas season?
Oh, clearly, you're tiny Tim.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. If that's how it's going to be, that's fine. Merry Christmas to you too, Nick.
And to all a good night. No, not yet. Our appetizer will be the 16/48 Spectrum tape magazine game, A Spell of Christmas Ice. And our main course features the 1985 Adventure International adaptation of the classic holiday feature, Gremlins. So, lest we feast after midnight, it's time to unwrap the first gift.
But isn't there big open source news?
Oh, but isn't there big open source news? Shall we do the news?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk a little news. There's been a lot of Christmas presents for text adventure enthusiasts.
There have been quite a few gifts for us to open lately. Jason, what is the first one that came to light in our news feeds over the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, so the most, I guess the earliest significant news was that Microsoft essentially capitulated to what was already true and has formally placed Zorks 1, 2, and 3 into open source under the MIT license. And, they very clearly were tipping off. We are very well aware of the Jason Scott historical source archive because the way that they did it was by pushing an update of the MIT license into that repository. So, yes. They're very aware of what's going on. Andrew Plotkin wrote a very excellent kind of, what does this actually mean and how did we probably get here overview. We'll link to that if you're listening to this and haven't already taken a look at it. Essentially, he summarizes that yes, he and probably some others had been advocating for this change. Yes, maybe there will be more games coming down the line to get this treatment. No, it's unlikely that Hitchhikers and Shogun will be included because those are properties that had other licenses, and it's already known that the Hitchhikers rights reverted to Douglas Adams many years ago. But it, again, Microsoft acknowledging what was already true. We were already treating it as open source. They did not release the Zork intellectual property, such as it is, into the public domain or under an open license. They emphasize the educational and historical elements and so forth. But it was nice to see them give such a nice overview of the Zork history. And Nick, I don't know if you caught it when I did my coverage of this on This Week in Retro. They opened the blog post, the Microsoft blog post, announcing it, including the word cornerstone, which I can't think was accidental.
That could have been accidental, but it's too perfect. We can't let it rest.
It really was
certainly
pretty good.
Not.
But then, just as we were summarizing this, you said, "Oh, but wait, there's more."
Well, I would, but we're just before we get to that. This does, of course, also come in the shadow of also this year they did release the Microsoft Basic under a license, or was that? Yeah.
They've been busy with some of those iconic properties for sure.
Yeah, so they've been going through a lot of their old microcomputer stuff, their 8-bit stuff, and perhaps giving a nod to communities that are interested in the preservation of older software.
Yeah, and when you're worth several $1 trillion as an organization, maybe you can sit around and say, what things do we own that aren't actually contributing to our market capitalization, and just declare those that they're for everybody. So good on them.
Yes, indeed. But of course, that's not the only 8-bit widespread text adventure platform that we've had released this month.
Yeah, I was sleeping on this one.
Yeah. So the A-code compiler, the Level 9 archive, specs, game sources, notes, a whole lot of data just was made public under a free license by...
it was Mike Austin, who was one of
Mike Austin.
One of the Misters Level 9.
Yes, indeed. And this has been something where there was also... this is another format where there was a lot of reverse engineering that went on over the decades and a lot of tools were created. And it's interesting to watch the community dive into this particular source release where new things were released to the community and discover, the existing original tools that were used for the original games.
Yeah. And if you are an open source license enthusiast scoring at home, it looks like they are doing Apache 2.0 if you're an aficionado. But
Right.
this, just as we're recording, that was just a few days ago. Hopefully, as you're listening as well, as we have every intention of getting this out, just in plenty of time for you to listen in your run up to Christmas. Just
Yes,
as a Retro Adventurers update, we actually have several episodes that were recorded during the warmer months here in the Northern Hemisphere of 2025 that are awaiting recording. So we do plan to get back on task with that and record some new stuff as well. But for these seasonal games, we wanted to make sure that we got them to you nice and quick.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's been noted in the Blue Sky channel that I did indeed start a position at the National Museum of Computing in Bletchley Park, and I've been pursuing a number of other things. So let's all hope that this is, we're all growing our business right now.
Yeah, and hearing more about your work at Chinmak. How do we say that?
Yeah,
Chinmak?
why not? TNMOC, we say.
We'll definitely want to talk more about that on the chat-isode, which will be coming up for our end-of-year enjoyment. But
stay tuned.
Yeah.
So I believe I said, lest we feast after midnight, it's time for the first game.
So our first game, A Spell of Christmas Ice. This was written by Mike Turner in the Quill. Was published on the 1648 Tape magazine for the Spectrum. And this was a brand new one to me. Like you said, Nick, Ben a while back had said, why don't we do a Christmas themed episode? Here's this game. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. What also was interesting was trying to load said game from the tape. What was your experience with that, Nick?
My experience was that I guess you had to be good with the fast forward button or something, or know some tricks of telling it not to load something, because it was like a disc magazine that we're familiar with. But a disc is random access, and so you push number 7 and it can seek there and load number 7. For a tape magazine, it seemed like it was trying to sort of ignore a number of entries on the tape until it got to the one you wanted, which meant you would have wasted all the time scrolling through everything. But nothing I could do could prevent it from loading the Spaceman in the Pyramid game from the beginning of the tape.
Yeah, and there's probably some convention to this that you and I both missed, because there's a nice, front end menu that I would have liked to have explained to me what I was doing. But so after exploring the front end menu for a little while, we just grabbed the standalone tape file and played it that way, which was fine.
I mean, that's effectively what we would have ended up with anyway.
Yes.
It's just a pity it didn't work. But I did have a look through some other items on that tape magazine, and there were some interesting items, mostly little notes and things that did seem to load for me. So I'm not entirely sure what would cause this fault.
So we get a wintry wonderland with a nice bright cyan background. Thank you to the Spectrum color palette for that.
Indeed.
We essentially we need to save Christmas, and what a finer way to do that than with a lot of red herring items and a nice compact map. I enjoyed like Quill Adventures. I have said this before, and I will continue to say this on the show. The more of these games that we play, the more convinced I am that two-word parsers are actually totally fine. It's fine. There are good ways to do that. There are player-friendly ways to do them, and then there are more hostile and fiddly ones. But the fact that a system is bound to a two-word parser, I no longer look down on that at all. So for a nice little game where you're moving around, doing some object manipulation, kind of going with the vibe of we need to undo this evil spell that has frozen things even more than usual at the North Pole and get things moving. Like I thought that was totally fine.
Yeah, I did, however, get a sense from this game that this was someone coming to terms with the tooling. Someone's just learning, perhaps had a couple games under their belt, but was still figuring out the best way to do certain things. In particular, you mentioned the red herring objects. Sure, that's often done for color, I'm sure. However, there were some directions that were difficult to discover. It was kind of guess the noun, and sometimes the verb was almost irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. Like in terms of what was a cardinal direction and what had to be accomplished with a go place or enter this. Yeah.
And I think this is something we'll also see with the Gremlins game, is that it's definitely... There's a convention in both these games that if you're outside of a structure, a cave, a grotto, whatever, going inside, typically you pick whatever the object is for that door or that building and you go to it, and it's fine. That works. And that I understand that idiom. However, I only discovered that later after beating the game and playing through to try and find some Easter eggs and, explore some things that I hadn't tried. And I discovered the way I played it was, it would say you come upon a big door or something, and I would say examine the door, and then immediately it would blink me through. So it didn't actually care what the verb was. It assumed I was going through the door.
Mm-hmm. So when I went back and I looked at some of the hints in the walkthrough, there was a mention because there's a sleeping cat, and it says, don't wake the cat. I tried to wake the cat. I tried petting the cat. I tried in the spirit of Smooch's Collier. I tried kissing the cat. What did one? I mean, I guess I didn't. I just put the nail on the head or the head on the nail or whatever, and just do wake cat. Did you have any?
Yes, I did. Wake cat. That was what did it. Yes, the cat transforms into the ice witch, and she turns you into a frog. Game over.
Oh, oops.
So that was actually the thing I went back to look for, because I found other people's descriptions of the game. Okay. And they said, he, don't wake the cat. And so gotcha. I just went and I did a few of the things you tried, but sure enough, wake cat. Simple as could be.
Keep it simple. Yeah. And in terms of the level of feedback that the player does or does not get, ultimately we're trying to get a spell book and read it in the right place. And we need to have, kind of line things up in a certain way. I didn't try every possible permutation, but it seemed like trying to read the book, read the spells. If you weren't kind of in the scenario where everything was right, it would just say something along the lines of, I can't do that now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was sort of a bell, book, and candle kind of setup. You had to have a couple of items with you as well as the spell book, and to do it in the right location. And then, you were lifting Santa Claus from the evil frozen spell.
Right. Now, we glossed over it because we had some game mechanics to talk about. But yes, Santa Claus has a grotto. And again, why does everybody in the 80s have a grotto? Why were the 80s grotto mad?
80s were grotto mad. But I will say, I think it's still, and this is where I wish we had Ben on with us still. I will say I do think that the notion of Santa's grotto is still in the public consciousness. I think that's very much like when you go to a shopping mall in Britain. That's how they advertise your visit with Santa.
I see.
And it isn't just, a throne in the middle of a food court or something. It really is like they will have built a special space, and it will feel like you're inside and you are in this sort of, North Pole ice cave that's been dressed warmly and is full of holly and, people dressed like elves, etc.
Okay. So he is kind of the brand carrier for grottoing.
I think he might be.
Okay.
However, I will say the first time I ever heard the word was actually on The Simpsons, and it was the one where they do in fact go to the Playboy Mansion. So that's I have no other way of putting it. I'm sorry.
Well, that was what brought it to mind, because yes, I think before we've talked about how the Playboy Mansion also helped popularize grottos. So it's an interesting kind of set of standard bearers: Hugh Hefner and Santa Claus, the two that were really bringing grottos into the public consciousness. But okay, so it's in the same way that we would have a setup that might be Santa's workshop or Santa's village or something like that.
Something like that
approaches more of a Santa's grotto. Okay.
Although I will say we did go to a hedge maze in the countryside here a decade or more ago, and the middle of the hedge maze was this cave with all sorts of artwork in it, and they called that the grotto. Oh. So
this game was inoffensive in terms of its content and puzzles. It was fairly irritating in terms of its bleeps and boops. I would recommend playing it with the sound down. You're really not going to miss out on anything and avoid some frustration. But if you're fine with a game that is pretty much just object manipulation, there's no examine. There's not a lot of deep descriptions, but. Right. Pick through some items, decide what's important, get to the end. I thought it was a fine little Christmas morsel. How about you?
Yeah, I think so. I could have done with a bit more color for the interactions. For example, you're given these logs, which I never found a use for, or perhaps you never know with these games if it's something that just magically works because you're carrying something or something like that. I kept trying to throw the logs on the fire to try and melt the ice around Santa in the room where the curse was evidenced. And it just kept giving me, nope, don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Nope, won't be doing any of that.
Yeah.
Solve the game the way I meant you to. Yeah. I think that does it for our 1648 magazine coverage, unless I'm forgetting something.
No, it's a reasonably charming little game. Not a big one. I mean, really not that much bigger than our whatever the 10-line adventure was we did. I mean, it's pretty small. All right. And what could be more Christmassy than Santa's Grotto? I think is probably the heartwarming family classic, Gremlins.
Yeah, I like that we've kind of accidentally found ourselves in the middle of, is X a Christmas movie? But we have aligned with, yes, Gremlins is a Christmas movie because it's our Christmas adventure game.
Yeah. So first of all, Jason, I mean, I think you and again we keep going into memory lane for Gen X kids, late Gen X kids. But how did you come across Gremlins in the 80s?
I saw it probably in a second run theater, but I saw it during its initial theatrical release. I know for sure that I did that, and it was at the local, whatever it was at the time, $1.50 ticket, whatever. So yeah, definitely saw it. And I think we saw it a few times, honestly, because although I am not at all into horror movie fare, but the original Gremlins, I think sits and sat at just that level of, this is frightening. This is, this has some gross out moments, but I don't know, like it's got that balance of heart, of human spirit, of whatever, that it just keeps it on the side of, I'm good with this. So even as a young lad who was definitely horrified by stuff that's even just a little more intense than this, Gremlins was a film that I could go back to multiple times. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think it's playful. I think it does balance that out a lot. I think it was comedic in its use of the gross out in a way that was telegraphed quite clearly to audiences in the trailers and that kind of thing. Yeah. So my experience, and I've mentioned my family's oddities before. You mentioned once on This Week in Retro that in America, we also had the PC superiority over console marketing that your co-host there said was possibly a uniquely British thing.
Well, specifically that they frame it as, we are so fortunate that the government told parents that they should buy computers. Right. And lots and lots of people were telling American parents to buy computers too. Yeah. It was less about a superiority thing. It's just the campaign of, of course you should, if you're a good person, you will buy your child a computer like that. Yeah.
William Shatner was telling us to buy a VIC-20. Alan Alda was telling us to buy, what was it, Atari, I think?
He was the Atari guy.
Right?
Yeah.
And they were all saying, oh, don't worry about those video games. Those won't increase your child's intelligence any. Get a computer that can help with their homework, right?
For sure.
So my parents were definitely of that ilk. They definitely took that to heart. And so that was part of the thing. And one of the things that they did, they were librarians. And one of the things that they did was they wouldn't really help me go to films at all. And so anything that was above my age range or required parental guidance, they were just not interested in going to the cinema at all. And I didn't really have anyone else when I was young who could take me. However, they would always get me the Scholastic Book Club book versions, the picture book versions of every film that was a blockbuster, just to taunt me. So I had Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I had Goonies. I had all of these books, and one of them was Gremlins. And so I internalized just through the text and everything, I internalized Gremlins is a Christmas movie because the text kind of laid it on a little bit thick that, yes, this is what's going on. And there's stills for you to sort of pore over and peer into details and try and figure out what's going on. I did eventually catch it later on in the 80s when I think either on videotape or when it finally aired on television. Yeah. Because there used to be a few year lag for that.
Right.
And that was, before the Tim Burton Batman, everything had a big gap in between the theatrical release and the home videotape.
Right.
And so that was my experience. And so I have this memory of the trailers of seeing, the Gremlins watching the movie as this sort of meta thing of, Gizmo Gadget, waggling his head and driving a Barbie car around, all these images that made it seem like, oh, this is absolutely tailor-made to appeal to you, even if you're a little creeped out by those little demons. And yet I had the picture book. That was it.
Interesting. Okay, that is way better than the guess that I had when you invoked your parents. Like, oh, did they force you to watch it, dubbed into ancient Greek? Because that's the thing that I associate with your dad was you needed the Commodore 128 version for the ancient Greek fonts. No, but that's much better. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So you're allowed to interact with the merchandised book forms of Blockbuster. That's fascinating. We should talk more about that at some point.
We should sometime at this time. Yeah.
So can I give just some speeds and feeds on Gremlins: The Adventure, and then I want to talk a little bit more about the UK and US cultural divide on this game. So Gremlins the Adventure, it's a 1985 release, and it was out for Amstrad CPC, BBC Micro, the Electron, Commodore 64, which was what I played it on, Spectrum, and there was a Commodore 16 plus 4 version as well. Now, Nick, you mentioned Adventure International. This was put out by Adventure International UK. Brian Howarth, who did most of the games, also under the Mysterious Adventures brand, is credited as the designer of this. And it took me embarrassingly long to really connect the dots on this, because I'm like, I don't remember seeing this game on sale. I can't find evidence of seeing this game for sale in the United States. And again, it took me way too long to realize, oh, I have the email of friend of the show, Scott Adams. So I dropped Scott an email a few hours ago asking him, hey, can you tell us, did you have anything to do with the theatrical licensing, or was this all Howarth doing it? Do you know why it wasn't released here in the US? There were some action game versions of Gremlins, including one from AtariSoft. And when you look in old Commodore 64 magazines, American Commodore 64 magazines, for example, you will see well into the 80s, overstock of the Gremlins adventure game, arcade game being sold. But it was not released here. And I don't know, again, was the AtariSoft action game, did that just kind of occupy all the license space? They couldn't sell it here. So did Scott have any impact on this one way or another? I'd really like to know more. If we can't get you that information as a drop-in in this episode, hopefully we'll be able to get that for you in a follow-up episode. But this appears to be a little bit of an unlikely scenario where there's an American Hollywood blockbuster film that a British company gets the licensing rights to do a film adaptation of, and it doesn't make it back to the home market of the US. So I was aware that this thing existed, but I'd never really connected the dots, like, oh, right, it wasn't sold here. Nick, when did you become aware of this game?
So I only became aware of this game when I was asked to play it.
Okay.
And so I went in blind, and I had this strange feeling as I was playing it that despite the fact that I was wielding a flashlight, that this was a British game. And it's really obvious. It's really obvious.
Yeah.
Because and the only reason I think that you actually call it a flashlight in the game is because there is a welding torch that becomes an essential piece of equipment. And so having flashlight and torch be two different objects was kind of baked into the game's structure.
It was, necessary to help.
But, there's a petrol station. The word snowplow is spelled the British way with a UGH. A hollow voice says snowplow, whatever.
Funny.
And, yeah. I'm good with those. So I could tell this was a British game. I just wasn't sure if it was a localization mishap or what.
Yeah, no, and Howarth is credited, fairly prominently. So knowing that he's British, helped explain that. But right, that there's not a sort of relocalized American version. So like I said, I played the C64 version. Which one did you play?
So I played the C64 version, and I actually played it on my phone this time.
Oh.
I used an app called 8-Bit Wonder, which I use in the F-Droid store because I am an absolute free software nutcase who doesn't use the Google App Store. And so this is fully open source thing, and you can just automatically load in a variety of different C64 builds and load the thing in.
Very cool. I have not checked that one out. Okay.
I will say one advantage of it is that you get an actual C64 keyboard on your screen instead of needing to work out that like run stop is mapped to escape or anything like that. Yeah.
That is handy. Yeah, so this, like we said, was released by Adventure International UK, and Brian Howarth largely published games in what we would call the Scott Adams format. Again, would love to get more information from Scott on this. So this appears to be an expanded version of his parser. So I'm not sure if that makes it the exact same one that he was using in those Marvel games from Game 2 onwards, because it does take composite commands, those like separated by commas. It does seem to, at least handle linking words, to discard them. It's still fundamentally a, two-word command system, but it doesn't just, balk at linking words like the being included in commands. I have a feeling from what I've read that we played probably the best overall version. It is a single load into memory, so there are the kind of very, very blocky, kind of solid color fill graphics for each location. But I got to say, I thought they were pretty decent for what they were. There is animation of a sort, the gremlin, spinning in the blender and so forth.
And the infamous flasher gremlin.
Yes. I thought that the presentation of this, especially given for what it was, a memory resident game, was pretty good. Yeah. Now then, we know that Gremlins, even at the time this was being released, this was a big hit. If you could see the film, you at least had the picture book. But talk about being dropped into a setting where it's really going to help you to know the conventions and the rules and the system of this thing, because this game starts just as things are starting to go sideways in the film, where the evil gremlins have emerged and Billy's got to fight his way through for survival. So you want to take over a bit and just talk about the setup of this?
Yes. So of course the setting of Gremlins is that there are these creatures, the Mogwai gremlins, which are the cute teddy bear ones, and there are simple rules. You must not get them wet. You must not expose them to sunlight.
Yeah.
Or something, and then also you must not feed them after midnight. And of course, if you get them wet, they multiply. They sort of blister off and clone. And then if you feed them after midnight, they turn into the evil gremlins, the actual demons that mess with equipment and are violent and horrifying. And so you go from this cuddly little hamster of a creature into these bat demons that just cause absolute chaos. And so you're basically in the situation where only the original Mogwai gremlin, only the original cuddly one named Gizmo, because of course gremlins are into equipment, and this being a Christmas story, it was trying to work the plot into the purchasing of home automation and other toys for Christmas time. So it was the gremlins of World War II airplane myth or whatever brought into the domestic sphere of 80s Americana, right? So you've got this home that's had a lot of modern equipment installed in it, and the cuddly gremlin has hidden away in a laundry chute somewhere, and all the other gremlins are just causing chaos in the house. And you emerge, I think it's in your bedroom where the pods have hatched, and there is still one gremlin right there playing darts. And if you don't make exactly the right move, you just die.
Right. Yep. It's a real steep curve to get going in this game.
And there are quite a few situations where, you'll discover, let's say in the next room, you'll discover a sword on the wall, which I don't remember from the film or the picture book. And it's great. You can behead a gremlin once, and then that doesn't help you at all. And in fact, if you're still carrying this sword, the next time you see more than one gremlin, they will just come at you, and they'll just immediately end you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I ran into inventory challenges quickly enough that I guess I didn't keep it long enough to.
Right. Yeah. Because you have the knife, and you can hide the knife enough to get past them at one scene. But if you're carrying the big sword, then they come after you. So no, there's definitely a lot of inventory problems. You can only hold what is it, 4 items? I think 5 items.
It's real limited. Yeah.
It's really small. Yeah. And you are basically trying to do a very elaborate trap laying game of your own to recreate sort of one of the ends of the gremlins, and to prevent a scene that took place in the story.
I think I know what you're referring to.
Yeah.
But we'll maybe come back to that in a second. So right, this game kind of assumes that there's a little bit of documentation built in. It gives like the rules that Nick gave and so forth, but much like honestly, much like most of the quote bookware games out there, maybe Robots of Dawn a bit of an exception because they did labor to make it different enough. But certainly games like Hitchhiker's Guide, where there are some obscure moves where you really needed the book to know. Nine Princes in Amber, which I hope we'll get to, where it's very much you need to have that book next to you. You need to kind of understand some of the beats in Gremlins to kind of get rolling. Yeah. And then by the time you get to a kind of puzzle sequence where it's less about you kind of once you establish I can pacify the gremlins for a while by playing the film, which again the movie or maybe the picture book will help you understand. Becomes this kind of race against the clock to to weld up all of these broken, again, ventilation shaft, great, something that gets kind of used a couple times in this. So it becomes a little more of a exploration, optimization, puzzle solving game in that. The engineering puzzle element of it, I did feel the vocabulary was a little limiting there. Like it was tough to know, have I done all of the steps that you're expecting me to do in order to do the thing that I think you've tried to tell me to do?
And then the only way to find out if it worked is to get away and then wait like a dozen times.
Yeah.
Which, if it didn't work, then you're like, great, time to restore my save.
Yeah, there was a lot of very time-dependent things. I never determined to my satisfaction. Nick mentioned the snowplow, which, yes, the PLOUGH spelling was one of the tip-offs that
I guess
that
that's
Howarth
the second scene from the picture book that you need to prevent from happening.
Okay. But yeah, like it's in my first couple plays, the snowplow was out and about pretty quickly. And I think that you're just going to die if that happens. And it wasn't clear to me if there was any way to prevent that other than just optimizing your way through the early stages of the game. Similarly, it seemed like the roving band of gremlins was just, there was a random chance that they were going to kill you when wandering around. Was I mistaken about that?
My understanding is, so it would say, "Oh dear, I have company," right? And that meant the gremlins were near.
Yeah.
Aside from the actual set pieces where the gremlins actually had, were depicted in the graphics, they could appear in any location, and you were kind of limited in the escape routes you had. So there were situations where they could corner you, but most of the time you could actually get away and go start the movie again and distract them for another however long.
Maybe it was that I was taking the wrong escape route when that came up. My perception of it at the time was just like, well, I need to go back to a save state because I can't go west this time. So I'll but okay, that might have been it.
Yeah, and regarding the snowplow, because that is an essential thing you need to sort out very early on.
Yeah.
And I eventually, I very quickly went to a walkthrough once I realized I was having enough trouble. And I sort of picked up the walkthrough midway. And because I'd been spending a little bit of time fighting the parser, fighting the list of verbs and figuring out, what was going on, it really wasn't that many turns I'd wasted, but just a few, enough for it to give me a hint. And so the game knew I was in trouble, and it gave me this hint, but it didn't tell me that I was already dead man walking because I couldn't make it to the snowplow in time to stop it.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And so I get there, following the walkthrough, optimized from then on, and that was it. It was over. And I think if you had played this game, freshly purchased, I can't imagine how you would discover the snowplow in its sort of vulnerable state without some incredible luck.
Yeah, because that was what I was saying. Is it very quickly seemed to disappear from the garage if you missed any optimal moves at the beginning at all. Which given the way stuff worked in the kitchen, where you have to like cycle through this remote control. Nick had mentioned all the automation, because part of the plot is that Gizmo is a gift from a gadget obsessed, frustrated inventor type to his son, Billy. Although I guess technically, I don't think it names the protagonist in this. So you could imagine you're anybody.
You could be anybody. As a matter of fact, the person who kills the gremlin in the microwave is actually Billy's mother.
Mom, yep.
In this story. And I remember in particular that scene when I finally saw it. I did watch it with my father, and the one thing he commented on that was the use of Dutch angles in the cinematography. So
he made it an educational experience for you.
He made it an absolute educational experience.
That's amazing. Let's see. So the Scott Adams format, I don't know how often we've discussed this here, but as initially specified, you only have 100 or maybe it's 99 messages. Now that's not room descriptions and that's not item names, but any feedback on the screen. So like things including, feedback about like why you can't do a thing other than just system default messages, like I can't do that now or whatever the parser default is. But any information you might want to give, even that's like, no, you can't do that and here's why, all has to be baked into just 99 messages. I could not find the decompilation of this. It's not in the Scott Kit archives, which has a bunch of other games, so I'm not sure if it hasn't been extracted and preserved yet, or if I just wasn't looking in the right place. But I think it might be that compact. And I gotta say, for the limitations and just kind of like very time dependent quirks of this game, I didn't feel that. I just put it this way. I was impressed by how much he packed into the limitations of the format, just by having what item is described on the screen, or where we can go based on it's describing okay, here's a cinema you can go into, here's a store you can go into, things like that. Clearly written by somebody who understood the limitations of the format and how to really optimize that number of messages.
Yeah. Yeah, and that even includes, the message at the end of the game when you've won, or the way in which you die, all that stuff. It really cramps your style, I think, to generate a game like that.
But if you know how to do it, What I also like, and this was honestly one of the things that inspired when I did the What If Scott Adams Wrote a Hamlet game 5 years ago, was that it just seems like weird cadence is a requirement of the format. It doesn't have to be, but to the decapitation you talked about, the feedback when you do that is, okay, I've beheaded a gremlin, head lands in fire.
A huge fierce green snake bars the way. I mean, this is baked into our culture.
Yeah, but just the all caps gremlin, head lands in fire, exclamation. There could be other words here. There just aren't. Yeah. And then the item on screen becomes gremlin, head in fire. There's just a certain economy of language that seems to come with it.
Yeah.
Certain things don't have periods after them. You're not quite sure if it's the end of the sentence or not. It's just, I don't know, something charming. But yes, as you mentioned, there's the petrol station, the snowplow, all those things that kind of tip us off.
The mains plug, I think.
Yeah, a lot of those things. I guess the other thing that threw me, and I'll admit it's been a while since I've seen the film, but the having to put the flashlight into the mailbox, and then that you had to do it by, according to the walkthrough anyway, because that's what I needed, was by mailing the flashlight, which it would not have occurred to me. I tried all sorts of put, whatever, and it doesn't know put, so could have used some help there.
What a strange solution to that part of the puzzle, though.
Yeah. Unlike Song of Christmas Ice, or Spell of Christmas Ice, I beg your pardon, it seemed like pretty much everything in the game had a purpose, or darn near everything. So at least you had that going for you. If it was,
I don't know, the gremlin head in the fire didn't do anything for me. I wasted a couple turns trying to pick it up.
Oh, okay. That was at least created by by something we'd done, but. Some things were reused, like the camera. I
think the word button. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's possible that the remote and the camera might have been linked somehow.
Oh, okay. That could be.
I know there was some kind of thing where I hit some kind of error or something when I was trying to use both. Before I dropped everything.
Yeah. So. Very challenging game. Not for the faint of heart. Certainly not for those frustrated by death. Restart, I will say this for it. The restart was quick.
Yes.
All memory resident, so there was no fiddling around with reloading. I mean, we do have the modern conveniences of save states and stuff like that, but it was at least
I used the on-disk save, and there was only one slot.
Yeah. So for the authentic experience, that would have been frustrating.
Yeah.
I use the modern conveniences of save states, although we do have a surprise Christmas treat, because again, this was not part of our option of even games to purchase back in the day. But I thought this was an interesting, albeit much more challenging than Spell of Christmas Ice, way to spend the holiday.
And getting back to some of the artwork, I do think there were parts of it that were extremely effective. I think when it went to a sort of 1-bit silhouette pattern, I think those gremlins really read effectively as gremlins to me, mostly in the cinema. So in the film, excuse me, the picture book, you would see them from the front. I mean, in the trailer, you would see them from the front, right? Because again, it was they were trying to draw you into the cinema to see the film Gremlins, and so part of the trailer would show these gremlins with 3D glasses on and throwing popcorn around, and the flickering projector behind them, and that sort of traditional scene of people enjoying themselves in a cinema. And from here, you're sneaking behind them, and you see them from behind against a red field. I think it worked really well. There was a close-up of the gremlins that made really effective use. They had a kind of zigzag pattern on their heads.
Yeah.
And it made a really effective use of just drawing them at an angle such that the sort of blocky two-color zones of Commodore 64 graphics created these little yellow triangles in the green heads that really read effectively. I did not find... You can look at Gizmo Gadget, the Mogwai gremlin, and that is probably... for such a main character level of creature in this story, it really seemed like they didn't put that much into smoothing it over. It looked a little strange.
I remember that, and that's obviously that's using up valuable storage space to try to get that in there. I thought it was fine. I thought it was cute, but you're right. There were more effective ones. I thought maybe we're talking about the same image. When it's the multiple gremlins on screen when they've killed you.
Yes,
I thought that looked pretty good. Yeah,
that was pretty good.
You alluded to averting an incident from the film. / picture book. Was that the pool sequence?
The pool sequence. Although now I realize the snowplow was also a thing that actually shows up that we're preventing by welding. Welding it in place. And it really was as simple as just dropping everything, pulling the plug, and draining the pool early on in the game, which prevented the sort of chaotic second wave of gremlins, because in the film he jumps into the pool and it just writhes, it broils with gremlin bodies as he multiplies at an incredible pace. And I must confess I didn't go back to a save to see what would happen if I let him do that, because it was just such a complicated mess, and I only had the one save slot, although I could have created more discs, but that's possibly one for the diehards to go and track down. What do you see when he jumps into a full swimming pool?
But you're right, and yes, that also means that it is we, the main character, rather than Gizmo, who kind of does the last mile move to defeat Stripe.
Yeah.
Gizmo does he does play a minor role in helping out in the solution of a puzzle or two, but yeah,
I have a note in here which, with double question marks, asks the question: Gizmo is my Floyd?
Yep, a little bit. Not as fleshed out, but you can map your experiences with him from the picture book to your enjoyment of the game.
Turn the page when the tone sounds.
Which overall, I think that as a British adaptation of an American Hollywood film property to the text adventure format, with a lot of challenge to it. The map is not huge. The map is manageable, but there's a lot to have to optimize your way through. So definitely an optimization puzzle solving challenge. A lot of running around, a lot of retracing your steps, and not knowing for sure if you're making the right move by retracing those steps, because there's so many other things that are time dependent. But yeah, I actually, if this is the best of Howarth, then that seems pretty good. If he had some better games earlier on, then so much the better. Yeah,
I think it's definitely a frustrating game to play without a walkthrough, but it's a delightful experience otherwise.
Excellent.
Well, I think I know what book I'm putting on my Christmas wish list.
Maybe we'll let you watch the film someday.
Oh,
if you haven't seen Gremlins 2, it's also well worth seeing, and kind of leans more into the humor elements, which I thought was a nice touch.
All right. Yeah, I'm afraid I've missed that one completely. Not even in picture book format.
Maybe that could be your homework before the chat.
There we go. Is there a Gremlins 2 game?
I don't think there's a text adventure, but we could always collaborate on one.
We could. All right. Well, I think that's it. And happy holidays to you all.
Yes, enjoy them, and we will enjoy seeing you again next time on the Retro Adventurers.
That's all.
You've been listening to The Retro Adventurers, a podcast about classic text adventure games. This episode was produced and edited by Jason Compton. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, including Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Podcast Addict. Visit us at retroadventurers.com and follow us on Facebook and Blue Sky. The Retro Adventurers is based on a format originally devised by Ben Collier, Jason Compton, and Dave Hawkins.